like you're constantly on high alert, dreading the day and worrying about yet another bad thing coming up? Are you a creative and it's been hard for you to fall asleep or stay asleep? Well, today I not only want to invite you to paint along with me in this art therapy-based step-by-step baby raccoon tutorial, but also to go on a fall treasure hunt. Hi creatives, it's Lauren Elizabeth with Lauren Elizabeth Animal Art. If you're new here, welcome. I'm a certified art therapy practitioner and an independent acrylic animal artist. I want to help calm that anxious mind and body using both walking and art. Just a few days ago, it was the first day of fall. So before you sit down to paint, can I encourage you to grab a bucket or a little baggie and get outside for a walk? Even 10 minutes is better than no minutes, and start gathering your favorite fall things, anything that grabs your attention. This simple, underrated act can help spark creativity, improve your quality of sleep, reduce cortisol levels, and help you process these stressors in a healthy, productive way. All right, creatives, let's get started. All right, so if you'd like to paint along, the traceable outline, the reference photo, which will not be up on the screen, a list of materials and the supplies I prefer, along with journal questions and even the techniques covered in this tutorial are linked below. Now I'm laying down the colors just for our background, which by the way was just so much fun. I had a blast painting the bark, the little den on this tree, the moss. It's a lot of fun. So I have white, orange, grass green, and now I'm adding yellow ochre. I'm also going to add raw sienna and raw umber. And this background may require more colors based on the treasures that you found if you went on that treasure hunt and gathered all those fall things. Keep them close so we can paint them. So all I'm going to do actually is take my angle brush and we're just going to simply paint this part white. We're going to add our fall colors here for the log, the tree, and the bark, but for now I'm just going to get that white in. So I have my size 10 angle brush, clean and damp. And again, if this doesn't feel right, maybe you want to do a sky blue background. That's up to you. But there's just a little bit of the sky showing through behind that baby raccoon. Now, as we work on our background, getting started on this raccoon painting, I want to ask you a quick question. Where are your feet right now? Where are your hands? Where's your head? Silly question, I know, but come back to your body. Be present in this very moment. And I want to invite you to take 5 deep breaths in through that nose and a long exhale out through the mouth. Now, as you're doing your deep breathing, I just want to note that this is what I like to call an open-ended tutorial. I guide you through step by step. I show you all these techniques, but I want to encourage you to listen to those nudges of creativity where you change the design a little bit. You choose a different color. You add a different shape. Allow your own beautiful, unique creativity be another guide for this process. Okay, so I'm going to wash my brush off, set that aside, and now we're going to I'm going to pull a mixture of white with my palette knife, by the way, orange, and yellow ochre. So that's one color. That's yellow ochre, white, and orange. I'll add a little bit more orange in there. Now into this bark, it's going to be some brown oranges. So I'm going to pick up some raw sienna, add some of my orange that we just mixed up into raw sienna. I'm going to add just a little bit more just to give us more paint to work with. And then from there, pick some of that up into the next pile with grass green. And I will be adding in more raw sienna into that. So that's a bit of our previous mixture with the added orange, raw sienna, added raw sienna into this, grass green, and I will add a little bit more grass green to that. And then we'll make a light green. So I'm going to pick up some white right down here, add some white, grass green. This is going to be a light green, like a mossy color with yellow ochre. So that's grass green, white, and yellow ochre. I might add a little bit more yellow in there. So that's just a little bit more added yellow ochre. And we can adjust them as we go. And then the last color we're going to mix up is our darkest value, which is going to be raw sienna and raw umber. Raw sienna and raw umber. This is what's really going to help make the areas between the bark stand out and the shadows on the, so we'll need quite a bit because we'll need some of this brown down here. So let's pick up some more. I'm going to add more raw sienna so I can add a bit more of that into that color. Now, before we really get started painting this, because it is a bit of a challenging background, I'm just going to pray. I'm going to pray that God can guide us through this. Dear Jesus, thank you so much for the chance to be able to paint. Thank you so much that we can just come and rest and be creative. God, I just pray that if there's anyone here with a unsettled spirit, any fear, any anxiety, any depression, any struggle, Father, whatsoever, I just pray for peace to overflow in their spirit, for them to feel that your presence they can rest on, that they can sit in and paint from. Father, I just ask that you come into this painting, come into this whole experience here, guide our hand. Amen. All right, so I'm going to actually switch. I think my best bet is going to be my cat's tongue brush. Yep. So I'm going to do my cat's tongue brush, and I'm going to make sure it's clean and damp. This is my size 8 cat's tongue brush. So what we're going to do is very loosely add with our brown, we're going to paint in the gaps in between the bark. Okay? And these are not a straight line at all because of how bumpy and the rough texture of bark. But the key here is doing this so that we can create that view, that perspective. Because the gaps get much wider over here and much smaller over here. So this next one is going to be just a little bit larger just because of the perspective. Meaning the gap is just going to get a little bit bigger every time we do the next chunk of bark. A little bit wider. And I'm also I have a sided canvas here, so I'm gonna paint this right off the side of my canvas. If you notice, this gets a little bit lighter. They're a bit darker here, the shadows in between these chunks, these sections on the bark. So I'm going to pull in a little bit just in the corner here of raw sienna and use that now with a wider gap. I'll do it about here, right there, creating like a little triangle in the lower left corner. I will even bring that same brown into this one next to it, where we added raw sienna to it. Just a little bit more. So I just washed off my brush, and next I'm going to go with our green. So let's pick up our green. We're going to work on this chunk here first, being careful to get around this little nose. That's what this is actually the main part of the painting that stood out to me when I was looking at the reference. I just thought it was so cute, squished up against that tree. All right, and so something else I want to do, I haven't painted in the whole part, so let's paint in the whole strip here. And we want to work wet into wet for the next part. And as you can see, I'm leaving bumps on the outside here. We like those bumps for this tree. And what I'm going to do with the point of my cat's tongue brush, just that beautiful point on this brush, I love it. I'm going to blend that green into the shadow, this dark brown, while that's still wet. Now I know I see a bit of orange in there, so I'm gonna add a little bit of that now. I'm actually gonna use this brown orange, it's more brown, and blend that into the side here, just in a few spots. Like here, like down here. What we're trying to do is just blend wet into wet, getting it pretty dark at the beginning, and then over time we're gonna layer after layer get that a little bit lighter. I'll add some more up here. Notice I'm not going over the dark brown. I'm getting above it. All right, next chunk, I will go in with our green again with a clean, damp cat's tongue brush. So now we're gonna work within this strip. Now I just want to spark some of that creativity, get some of those ideas churning in your mind. Maybe in this painting you want to add a little birdie perched on one of the branches. Maybe you want to add a few more small little branches. Maybe you want to add mushrooms. Maybe you don't want to add a multicolored leaf, but pine cones instead. Maybe you want to add some food that this little baby raccoon is hiding up in this tree. I just want to encourage you to use those what ifs in a very positive, productive way. What if I added a sunshine in the upper left-hand corner? What if I pasted my favorite quote in the lower right-hand corner? You never know unless you try. Just test it out and see what happens and enjoy yourself. Excellent. And because this area has dried, I'm gonna have to pull up some more of our dark brown and into that green on the bottom. And on the left side, I'm gonna blend it up into that dark green. I just did a little bit there. I'm seeing white specks that were bothering me. So I think I can add in some orange, but in that strip, I'm gonna first start with our lighter green, okay? I picked up our lighter mossy green, and this is where we begin to add that loose technique where I'm doing dab, 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 little dots. Some are small, some are a little bit thicker. And this is just the beginnings of some of that moss. So less is more. I don't need to add too much, and we'll add more later. But this also helps us distinguish, this is one strip, this is another, and we don't kind of get them meshed together. I'm gonna blend this a little bit with my brush. I have a clean, damp cat's tongue brush. You see how I'm just using this damp brush to blend? That's all I'm doing. I'm not adding any more paint. I just am blending it since it's damp. Now the next one, I'm gonna add in a bit more brown into this green. So I'm actually losing some of my green, but I pulled in more raw sienna into it, into a separate pile. And that's what I'm gonna use now. This is definitely an earthy color for the next strip that's a bit thicker. I just pulled in a little bit more green into it, adding a little bit more green into the brown on the bottom. That's what's so nice, to have kind of a variation of browns and greens on one strip for that first base layer. So that's what I did. And I'm gonna wrap it around the side of my canvas. And because of the perspective and how the tree is angled circular like this, it's gonna wrap around. I'm not gonna need to blend too much into this area. I'm actually just gonna leave it as is. I might even go in, look at what I'm doing now. I'm just adding a little bit of raw sienna to my brush, basically like a glaze. Just a little bit lighter brown there because it's facing us as opposed to kind of pushed away, just because of the perspective of that log. All right, so I'm actually gonna mix up a little bit more of our colors here. I just wanna mix up our grass green and a little bit of our orange here. Just mixing some more up. I'll even add a little bit more raw sienna to that. And more grass green. So just mixed up some more, slightly different, but very similar. I'm gonna test this out. I wanna make sure that this is actually getting lighter. So what I'm gonna do, I'm going to start pulling in some of the orange. So a lot more orange. So with a mix of this grass green and this orange brown, that's what I'm using to paint this in, with streaks of green and streaks of that orange brown. Oop, now I'm like losing my spot. I just picked up some more of that orange. See how there's a little bit more orange than green? Green here, orange there. I like it. I'm gonna continue with that. And for the last one, I'm gonna go in with this brown orange. That's what I'm gonna use at the very end, that little triangle at the end. But pulling in just a little smidge, just a little bit of greens too. Not overpowering it, not too much, just a bit to connect with the other parts. Now a brush I definitely don't use very often, but it will actually work very well for this technique, is my size 4 round brush by Arteza. I just rarely use this brush, and I think it's going to be the perfect thickness and help us get that texture on the log. So I'm going to go back to, or I'm actually going to go to our lighter orange now, and with subtle dabs, I'm going over some of the oranges we already added. Remember, we added alongside here. Just wisping my brush, dab here, dab there. I'll add some more up here. That's pretty obvious on that side, on the top. Dab, dab, dab. And at this point, you kind of test it out. You do a few dabs, see what you think, and then adjust it if you need to, or move on. And that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna add just a few dabs now to this strip. I'm going to do the same thing on this one, and wonderful if it's wet, because then if it's you can just make a subtle dab because it blends in with the other colors and it darkens it. It's not as bold and bright. So I'm just really testing it out, placing it, but I'm also keeping in mind that this is the top. This is in closer towards the tree. So this is the top area getting the most amount of light. So that's probably why I want to add a few highlights on the top of this, on the top of these areas, because of that light source. And we'll do the same with the light green too. Use that as a highlight. But less is more. You don't need to go overboard with this and then lose the sections in between. I am just gonna go over some of the white that I see, like right here with my dark brown. So if you need to, go back with your dark brown and go back to those areas. All right, I'm gonna go to this darker orange brown right here. Add a few dabs here and there on these strips that are a bit wider, still a little wet for me. All right, then we're gonna go to, still with my round brush, the light green. And the light green, I'm just gonna add smaller texture using the point of this brush. Now in some areas, I'm gonna add tiny little dots of this light green, and other areas it's gonna be a bit looser, bit larger dabs. So just continue to let it flow. Don't restrict yourself so much, just kind of play with these shapes, these colors. Keep the stakes low. This is all a learning process. There's a wide, forgiving learning curve here. I see on the side, and it's a bit blurry, but like right here, there's like bigger chunks of moss. So now we're going to go to our size 1 round brush and go to create a little bit more texture with our dark browns. So these dark browns are going to actually now kind of cut up into some of these pieces of bark. So there'll be like little knots, but parts that are cutting in, almost looking as if like it's been eroded or something like that. But this is creating more of that bark texture. And I'm doing that all on each strip. Some will have more, some will have less. You can like break up the sections just slightly. See how I've connected it to that part? Gives it a little bit more realism and dimension. You can spread it around. I'm using the dry brush technique to just spread the little bit of paint that's left on my brush around. Now, as we get down here, it's not going to be as dark. So that's why I'm going in like we did here before with our lighter browns mixed in with the darker browns. That's raw sienna with our dark brown. That's what I'll use around these parts of the tree. And this one, there's not much showing. This one I'll add just a little line coming down in the middle. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add more green. I don't want as much orange on this one. So I'm going to test something out. I'm going to do a mix between our dark green and our light green. Tone it down a little bit so it's like a medium green there with my size 1 round brush. And I'm going to go over the outside of it, going over some of the oranges. I don't want as much orange there. Just a few dabs of orange, but more green. I like that a lot. Ooh, don't you just love it? So fun. Now the key is not to get too caught up on details because we're actually adding more detail to the raccoon. This is slightly more blurry. We're adding a bit more looser brush strokes, so don't get too caught up on too many dabs and detail. We're gonna get to that later. So we're gonna do the same technique, but kind of not at an angle now. We're gonna do it up and right with our strips of bark. So hopefully you still have your brown, your dark browns left. I'm actually doing something a little different. We're not gonna do the strips just yet. We're actually gonna go right in the center of this gap right here. And I'm gonna bring it all the way down to about the center right side of our canvas. It's almost like a little den for this little baby raccoon right here inside the tree. But I'm not gonna paint all the way over to the raccoon. I'll paint about there. And right here and in here is where we're gonna start doing that bark texture. So I just wanna make sure this reaches over my canvas. And now what I'm gonna do is start creating real thin strips of bark down from here, using that point of my cat's tongue brush. Another very thin strip right in front of it. Bring it down to about there. And these will go behind it. And so, yep, we're gonna go over some of this and that's okay. We wanna do background and then we'll paint in that hair once we get the bark done. Okie doke. So I'm actually not going down from this line. I'm going in front of it, bringing it down, and that's gonna be behind that fur, come out right about here. I'll bring this down a bit. We don't want to bring it down all the way because this is going to be our dark brown, and then at the end we're going to add our fall leaves or whatever fall items you want to add that you found on your treasure hunt. So next one, I'm going to make just a smidge wider so that I can have just two strips here. Bring it down to the ear, and this is going to be darker. So I'm now gonna fill this in with our dark brown. My brush is getting too thick. It's sticking to my canvas. That is a good sign that I need to refresh it, wash it off, make sure it's clean and damp. And then we'll just paint in this entire area underneath the baby raccoon. Why not? Just because of the shadow being created, I will actually get rid of this bottom area because the hair kind of goes up like that at an angle. Use that nice point again to get right into that little nook. Just want to paint the sides and make sure I get in any white that I left. I don't want to have any white specks there. Also around this bottom, I want to make sure I paint that too. Okay, we will be working wet into wet up from here, all right? So we want to keep that steady pace up so that we can start blending up. It's going to be so much fun. I'm going to go with our dark green again, and I'm going to start pulling up. I'm literally pulling up some of that dark brown. If you need to pull in some more dark brown, if yours is dried, I won't go up all the way, but I'm just working in between these two strips, or three strips. And I am going to need to go back to my brown to blend that up. I want to have a nice blend at the bottom. Excellent. And I'm gonna wash off my brush before that dries now. Oh, this is so fun. And then I'm gonna dive into this lighter orange. Ooh, that actually is a little too light. So let's go into our darker orange. Our darker, more brown orange. Blend that into the green, but not all the green. See how I'm moving my brush? I'm blending and applying. Up and down, and leaving that bumpy texture at the same time. We're going to cover up some of that raccoon hair, and that's okay as we work up. I also want to bring this up a little bit more and do some more blending with our dark brown. So back with our dark brown and bringing this up. So it creates a shadow, but it still has some of that orange brown in there. Going back to my orange brown to pull that up a bit into that little den. I'm going to go back with this orange brown and actually connect a small little strip of bark in with those browns. So should be doing some blending into that. Connect it with these greens to create even more neat texture. See how I did that? So there's this nice line, but doesn't go all the way down. And with a damp brush, I can just blend this down. And if I need to, because I actually pulled off some paint there, I'm gonna pull back some brown and some orange brown. So it's darker up here, and I think I pulled off some paint. There we go. I just had to I'll put back some dark brown right there. Now, just like here, I went dabs and streaks of orange and browns and green. So I'm going to mix up our grass green mixture, our green mixture with more raw sienna, so it's more brown. And start painting up from there. I'm working in the middle, but I wiped off some paint so I can go in with some of that bright orange and blend it together. Okay, I'll do that again. Grab some of this brown green. I'm going to put back some more orange. So here I go with the light orange, blending it up with that green. wipe it off, go back to my green brown for up here. So we get those streaks of all these beautiful earthy colors. I'm actually going to add some down here just because it looks a little thin. Green just tends to go thin. It takes a few coats for it to really stand out. So that's why I went back to that. I am going to go back to that orange to pull out some of these oranges, some of orange browns, because I have some white specks that I want to get rid of. Do you have any little white specks? I don't like them. I'm going to try and get rid of them now before I move on. So like we have more oranges and browns over here, I'm going to do the same thing on that side. So I'm going to pick up this color, add some more raw sienna to it, and switch off between this brown, orange, and green. So here I go. I'm going to pick up some more green, blend into some of that. So we have greens and oranges and browns, but mostly I want this brown orange on there. And I'm going to do that on the final strip, touching our white background. But I want to get some greens in there, so that's why I'm pulling back in some greens, especially where they connect with the dark shadow. I'm going to pick it up so I can get the sides here. Excellent. So to add even more interest to this background, I'm going to kind of do a twisted bark, and I'll show you what I mean. Hopefully you have more of your brown. This was raw sienna with raw umber. I'm not going to start here. I'm actually going to start like here, so we see the side of it and it's like twisted. See how I just made 3 lines that are very much not looking straight, and that's good. Quite bumpy. And in between those gaps, that's what we're going to be painting with more of our browns and oranges and greens. Hi, Meow Meow. All right, so let's start with our greens. I'm going to go in there with our grass green mixture. I'm going to start in the center. Start with the largest one. And in a second, I'm going to pull in some orange and blend those together. So here I go. I'm going to grab our lightest orange, blend that in between this white gap, in with some of those greens, and let it kind of do its thing. I'll do that again, but I want a bit more of a shadow here. And so that's why I'll start with the grass green in that area, which is darker on the dark end. And then down here, I'll pull in more of the bright orange and blend it. And I'll wipe some of that paint off so I can blend it a little bit better there. And the last one at the top, I think I'll add in more of the brown. So let's go in. I'm going to grab some more of the raw sienna with the green, paint that in, and pull in some more orange into that. Have that color diversity, but still connect them in color at the same time too. And here's where we go back to our size 1 round brush and our dark brown. Hopefully you still have some left. We just need a little bit more because we want to now add, just like we did here where we cut in between, find any spot and just cut in between. And while it's wet and it fades, like right here, I just kind of had it fade down. And if you don't like the section, you can paint right over it. Or if you want to thin out the section like I'm about to do right here, where I'm going to thin it out and make it a little bit more bumpy there. Just play with it. Just see what happens. I'm actually going to reconnect it, going back to my orange. And I'll even put an orange here. Going back to my dark brown and creating like a little bump in here and right above it here. I'm going to widen this shadow right there. And also, I have a little bit, I'm going to add water to this brown so it makes a glaze, so that I can add a little bit more shadow right here at the top. But you know what doesn't quite make sense? There's such a large gap here. I should either extend this branch over top of it to create this shadow or lift this up. So that's what I think I'll do. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to get some of my green and some of my brown orange. Lift that up even where I just darkened it, and I'm going to just lift that up with more green. That makes a little bit more sense. And even extend this out with our light green. So here we go with some of our light green. Pick and choose where you want it. Little strips or little dabs. Less is more. You don't need to add too much. I'm tempted to go crazy with this green because it's so pretty. Dab, dab, dab. There we go. And if you want to, add a few more to the other spot if you feel the desire to. I do. Listen to those nudges. So I'm just still going in with my grass green, or this light green mixture. That's just what I'm using. I'll go back to my dark green. Touch up some of these areas here. And And I think we are ready to work on that raccoon. So let's refresh our water when you feel like you're ready to move on. Okie dokie, so for this raccoon, we're gonna need violet and phthalo blue. This is phthalocyanin blue. I'm gonna grab more yellow ochre. I need to get some more. I am running out. So we need yellow ochre, phthalo blue, violet, and we're gonna need some fluorescent pink. Always gotta have my pink. Gotta have my fluorescent pink. Just such a beautiful, vibrant color. And if you don't already have raw sienna, that's another color we'll need. So I'm just gonna freshen up that. We need black. Can't forget black. I'm gonna have that right next to the white. All right, creatives, so I'm gonna pick up my size 0 round brush. I'm gonna mix up a dark gray, lots of black, and a bit of white. And we're gonna just fill in both eyes. Easy peasy, right? And as you're doing that, I wanna share with you the verse that really inspired this piece. 2 Timothy 1 verse 7. For God has not given you a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. I relate to Timothy from the Bible so very much because Paul just constantly had to remind him to be courageous, to be bold, and also because Timothy was noted to have lots of tummy issues, having a weak stomach, and Paul would give him advice, likely because of the stress Timothy experienced and the worry, maybe some anxiety. So let this be our reminder, you and I, that worry doesn't serve us. It actually does no good in our lives. And that we were not created to be worriers. It's both simply and very complexly a pattern, a habit. And for me, whenever that worry comes up, what I have been really exercising my mind to do, like actual effort, it takes effort to do this, is just remembering that is not how I was designed. I might feel this worry right now. I might feel it in my stomach right now, but God has equipped me with a powerful mind that I can meditate on His truth, a sound mind that is not chaotic despite what my behaviors show, and a loving mind, because we are image bearers of God's character. These are all gifts that He gave us to put to good use. And we're going to do something neat. We're not going to go in with white for those eye highlights. We're going to go in with a light blue. So I'm going to mix up in another pile white and phthalo blue. While that's wet, I'm going to mix up a medium blue, okay? So not a light blue, but a medium blue. And right where the light is hitting, and the top close to the middle, I'm just going to keep reapplying more of this blue paint and blending it in to a little circle on both eyes. It'll just take a few applications to do that for it to really stand out. All right, so as you do that, I'm going to dive into these journal questions. Here's the first one. What do the sources of your stress look like? You can draw an image or write down what you feel it looks like in your journal. Question number 2. In what areas of your body have been affected by the worrying in your life? And number 3 is more like an action step, but I'd like you to draw an image in your journal of you releasing that stress. So in your own way, you releasing that, letting it go from your body. What does that look like for you? As you think about that, I'm going to add more white to this blue, get it a little lighter. Once I have that mixed up, I'm going to add an even smaller circle, little dot, over top the circles we just blended. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to add some more white. Sometimes you just need to keep applying it for it to stand out. And I'm going to continue on with that now navy blue. It has a little bit of black in there. That's okay. I'm going to pull in more phthalo blue and white so it becomes this dark to medium blue. And guess what? We're going to use that now to outline both eyes, but not the entire eye. I'm going to work on the bottom left first. And now alongside on the right side of the left eye and bringing it down. You see how I did that? To a bit of a point. I want to lighten up. I'm adding more white to this to lighten up the bottom left, but then going back to this slightly darker version of blue to do the same but opposite thing on the right eye. Exact same thing but opposite. And you want the width of these to be about the same. You don't want one to be thinner or thicker than the other. You want them to be about the exact same. And come down like this. And I'm going back with my lighter version of blue to lighten up this right side of the right eye. All right, so we're going to do something also, again, very unique for the nose. I've added more white to my blue, so it's a light blue. And first what I'm going to do is underline the bottom of that nostril right here, the bottom of it with this light blue on the right side and on the left. It's more just the top and not the bottom, but I am still going to add a little bit to the bottom on this left nostril. And adding more fluorescent phthalocyan blue to that, so we're at a dark blue now. I'm going to paint now beneath that light blue line we made very carefully. I'm even going over, because this is resting slightly over that branch. I'm bringing that over. And again, keep a steady pace because we're going to be needing to blend in some black into this. So we don't want to take too long on this, and then it dries before we can blend it. Then I'm going to go above that line. With this blue, working at the bottom. I'm now working above this nostril, just like I went above that one. This has a bit more of a shadow over it. I'm going to fill that in all the way to here and then down around it, below it. I want to thin it out so the thickness is the same on both sides. And so I painted that in, and going back in with the dark gray that we mixed up if you need to. Oh, that's raw umber. Don't want to do that. Mix up some more of your dark gray. And at the bottom, I'm blending that in with the phthalocyan blue and white. I'm also going to go above that highlight now, above that part of the nose, I mean. Washing off my brush. Want to go back to this blue. I'm going to mix up some more Phalocyanum blue and white. Oh, I want to get that lighter because it's actually going to get a little bit more light on that part of the nose. Work to about there. I'm now using clusters of lines to create a little bit of a fuzziness on the end. And then as I move in closer, I'm going to add a bit more white because it's getting pretty strong highlight right here. So I'm adding more white to this blue to get that highlight in there. And it's more on the top right, which is why I'm going to take this paint off, go back to that darker blue, and blend it. But it's not boxy. It's actually not a box-shaped highlight. It's more round. Which is why I'm going to use the circular blending motion to create also the circular shape of that highlight. But that highlight on that side is just a bit too dark and a bit too long. So I'm going to go on that side with our dark gray, thin it out, and cut it off right about there. Even bringing my dark gray above it and over. So I have a clean brush right now. It has no paint on it, and I'm just blending some of that blue in with the gray, creating a little bit of a navy blue. I'm adding a bit more of my dark gray on the right side now. Right above that nostril. There we are. So we want this to be a round nose and a round highlight. And I lost a bit of my highlight over there. Let's see if I can put it back in. I'm gonna get that light blue. Nope, it needs to dry first. I'm gonna put it back in once that dries. Excellent. So let's move to our size 1 round brush again. And I'm actually going to hold that because on my right hand, I'm going to mix up with a palette knife, Phalocyanum blue and violet. Equal parts Phalocyanum blue and violet with a bit of white. Not too much white. All right, so this is our indigo that we're going to be working with for the mask of this sweet little raccoon with my size 1 round brush. You ready? So I'm going to work around this blue outline carefully. And you'll notice to get that fur texture, I'm creating clusters of lines, not very accurate lines, just up and around here. So it's not this perfect line because I actually want some of this to cut up in there, and then we'll have the lighter fur cutting in between that. And I'll do the same thing as I move. That's what these lines are for. Getting a little bit of that fur texture, cutting up a little bit higher into that white, and then back around the eye. I'm also going to get a little bit of that stumpy hair texture, fur texture right here, cutting down a little further into this part of the muzzle. And before that dries, guess what? We're actually going to pull in some raw umber and really get that dark, blending that just right next to that log, but not all the way up. I don't want too much. I just pulled some off, and now I'm going to blend it with this indigo. I'm going to pause for a second, grab my size 0 spot brush, because this blue that we made, our Phthalo Cyan blue with white, before this area dries, I actually want it to fade in like that. I'm blending it in with some of the indigo, and we're going to do the same on that side. So it's light around the eye and then kind of fades in a little bit. I'll set this aside, wash it off, set it aside, and let's do the same thing on the right side. Okie dokie. Now let's cut in along this fur and paint in the area, but not all the way to the bottom. We're actually going to stop about right here. I'm going to draw a line to where we're going to stop. Right about here. So this area is where we're going to paint this indigo in. I'm actually going to bring this out just a smidge, just a little bit more. And now before I forget, I'm going to add in that light blue with our medium blue. So not a light blue, our medium blue. Blending that inside here in the eye. And I'm also, while that's wet in that area, I am going to mix up. This is white with a bit of black to create a medium gray. I'm going to get that darker. I just tested it out. I want to get that a little bit darker. Okay. And now I'm going to just paint below there. I'm just going to paint below there and then use more of our indigo to cut in over top that gray for that texture. Looks a little wonky now because it's this kind of a line, but we will remedy that in a little bit.
I'll go up to about there, maybe a little higher. I'll go up a little bit higher. Okay. Before that dries though, I am going to go to my dark brown, which is dried. I'm going to just pull in some raw umber and some raw sienna. And at the bottom, here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to blend into some of that gray. Very carefully blend in that brown to create this shadow. This is a little tricky because of how wet the gray is. You might need a bit more brown to do this. But ideally, we want this dark right here at the bottom. And I'm even going to use this brush to cut into some of the grays. And I want that brown to be blended into some of that gray. I'm going to actually add even more because I think it's just not quite there yet. Just mixing up some more with my cat's tongue brush. And I'm switching brushes now to my size 0 liner brush. There, that's how we want it. That's how we want it. Dark, dark, dark. See how I'm using this brush to create those lines? Pulls out some of the grays and gets that darker brown. That's what we want. But now for that gray. So I have a clean, damp brush, liner brush. At the top here, I'm going to pull some of those grays over top the brown, the dark brown. Like that. And then we'll do the same if we can. If the gray will let us, we'll do the same with the indigo in this liner brush. I'm resting my hand here so it can keep my hand nice and steady. Add that darker hair over top the gray. And before all that dries, I'm going to go in with our raw umber and a little bit of indigo, both on my brush, and add some of that darkness right there. But being careful that I don't add too much. I really don't want it too much brown. I want more indigo in this area, just a hint of that brown. And there we go. Now I always like to work on the darkest areas first. And so the next darkest place is here, going into here. And this is where I'm going to add some of our pinks. So with my size 8 Arteza cat's tongue brush, violet and fluorescent pink. Watch me first. I'm just going to add some right in between here. And then pull in some raw sienna into a corner of that and blend it down. Let's not worry about the fur texture too much just yet. Let's just fill it in. And then as I get to the bottom, guess what I'm going to pull in? Some yellow ochre. So we have violet, then brown, then yellow ochre. And I'm going to switch to a smaller brush to get into this. I'm going to use my size 0 spot brush. I actually don't even have any paint on my brush. I'm just pushing that around. And I'm going to pull some more yellow ochre. But you know what, guys? I'm going to pull in some orange in with that yellow ochre. Orange meets blue. That's always a good thing. Orange, yellow, brown, violet. So, so pretty. So I'm going to go back to my pink, purple, my magenta, add some up here, and also pull a bit more down with fur texture right between the eyes. So that those lines just cut into some of the browns and the yellows and leave some lines there. Even on the side. I'm just going to mix up some more of the pink violet so I can add another coat right here. And guess where else? Just a little bit right here. Dab, 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 not too much. I am not adding too much, just a little bit.
So for the next step, I'll be using my size 8 Arteza cat's tongue brush.
So up from there, I'm going to pull in some white into this purple pink, okay? It's actually quite a bit of white. So that's purple, pink, fluorescent pink, and white. And this is going to feel weird, but we're going to fill in this entire area on the head with my size 8 cat's tongue brush and leaving this white fur, but we'll pull it down a bit because we're going to layer that lighter fur over top. We're applying a base before we add all the little fur texture. And I'll go up to about here, to the ear. I will stop before the log. I'm going to mix up some more. Violet, fluorescent pink, and white. This looks so nice up against the greens too, pulls out the greens. And I'll bring it all the way up to that head. Right here, I'll bring it all the way up to there. Just mixing up some more again. Looks like a little cap, right? Like a little shower cap. And here's where I start to pull it down. Following those lines as best I can, I'm going to start pulling it down so that we can layer over top with our lighter strands. See how this kind of comes down here a bit more? I'm going to add a bit more down from there. And I'm going to move to my size 0 rigger brush. I won't need that brush. Size 1 round brush will do. And I'm going to add a bit more purple to this magenta. So it's pink, more purple, and white. Add that on the top of the ears. See, these ears are kind of pushed back. And I'm going to pull this up to about there on both sides. Working along this line. See this line on both sides. So I've refreshed my water. So if you haven't done that, I really recommend you do that. So we are going to go lighter. So with some yellows, some browns, and we don't want those pinks and violets to blend into that. So I'm going to mix up, I need more white. I'm going to just simply add it to where I'm going to mix this next color with yellow ochre, white, and raw sienna. So that's a little bit of raw sienna, yellow ochre, and white. Now we're going to do a funny technique where we add the yellow ochre and white here, and then with a liner brush go on the top, and then later we're going to cut back over that with our white. It's going to be kind of a process, but that's usually what it entails. So with my size 1 round brush, I'm going to use this color to just fill this area in behind this ear. Pulls out those purples. Size 1 round brush, we're going to round that bark, and I will cut down to here. We'll use a different color for the area in front of it. I'm just working on the back. So I'll cut down to about like there, and now work up along that hairline here. Now this brush doesn't really give you the best texture for hair, which is why we'll switch to our liner brush next. But what I'm also going to do, I know I'm throwing curveballs at you. I'm also going to pull in some orange, just a little bit, and create more of that orange yellow texture. So it's a mix of both, but more yellow than orange, which is why I'm back with my yellow, my golden color. Go as far as I can with this brush and pull it down to the head. Excellent. And now while that is wet, I'm gonna need my liner brush. This is my size 0 liner brush. This one is my size 0 liner brush. Yep. And here I'm going in with some violet in a corner of this yellow. So violets, more violet than yellow, so that I can then add that fur texture one line at a time, cutting into that yellow, but also over top some of that white background. And this is going to be blending in with some of that yellow, and that is okay. That's what we want. And notice, you'll notice soon I'll bring some of this purple down, so it's not only on the outer edge, the top. Here I go, bringing it down a little bit further, cutting over some of the oranges. I just need to pull in a little bit more violet into this. I even see a little bit right behind the ear. Just line after line. And then I'll go back with my yellow and go over that to refine some of those lines and also just lighten up some of that area so we have more yellow than purple. I don't want as much purple, but I just want some purple, some orange, and making sure it's nice fine lines. A little bit more violet. Gonna do that again. I'm making these a little bit more clumpy. So some areas have a bit more condensed fur with the purple. And now I'm going back with my yellow. And so once that's dried, we'll cut in, defining some of those strands and those clumps with white. But what I need to do is actually pull down some of this wood area around the ears, this bark. So I'm going to do my best to try and match these colors right along here. So first I know that I can add some of the brown right here and right here. That's the raw umber and raw sienna. I also know that I can mix up more of my orange, but with the raw sienna mixture to match this brown here. So that's orange with a raw sienna. I'll pull some of that down here and blend in some green to match right there. And why not use that color for right here? And if you have any little things that you want to touch up while we're at it, that's just raw umber and raw sienna. I'm here, so why not? If we just go in with our lines that helped, like we went in here just to create some more of that texture, I'm going to do that a little bit more than I have it. And I'm using raw sienna and raw umber to do this. Cutting in, thickening up some of these gaps in between. Going back to some of my orange there too, I actually can pull in some orange, maybe like right here. Yep, I get lost in it. I just get so lost in it, so fun.
Now, I'm hoping you feel the same way, but if not, I just want to invite you to come back here to the present. If you're frustrated, that's okay. And it's extremely normal because we are still in that ugly phase. And boy, does that ugly phase seem to last a long time.
So I just added some more raw sienna to that orange green. Pulling a little bit more green in here. I'll pull in a little bit more orange. Just a little dot right there. I gotta get that. Okie dokie, so I have cleaned my paint palette. I'm going to start fresh with some new colors and make some more room for the new ones that we'll be mixing. So I have white. I'm also going to be adding yellow ochre. Some more raw sienna. Black, because we'll be making another gray. And raw umber. All right, so we'll just work with that. All right, so I'm going to be mixing up white and a little bit of yellow ochre. And then a little bit of raw sienna. So that's lots of white, yellow ochre, and raw sienna. So I'm going to switch to, I'll be using my size 0 round brush. So my size 0 round brush, and what I'm going to do is start first on the muzzle. So here we go, working on the white fur area of this raccoon using our yellow brown. I'm going to fill in the muzzle on both the left and right sides. And I'll just fill in this area, but then layer over top the little hairs, the little fuzzy hairs. So I'll go up to about there and here. And then we'll also need to darken up this area, darken up some of these areas while it's wet. Now, just because of how tiny that is, I'm going to wash my brush off and set it aside and grab my liner brush. This is my 2\0 liner brush. And what I'm going to do is pick up a bit of gray. So that's just black, so it can create a gray mixed in with this yellow brown. And inside this little nook right here, I'm going to paint that in with this color. I could even get that just a tiny bit darker. And blend that in wet and wet at the corner. And I think I might have to go back to my nose because I painted over that a little bit, but that's an easy fix. I'm going to wash off my brush so that I can now use this damp brush to blend these areas together and even pull in some more of this yellow brown. We have the tiniest, smallest little area right here that's also going to be needing a shadow. Not a very big one, but it's still there on the other side of the nose. And once again, I'm going to go back with my yellow brown and blend that in. So it's a nice blend, nice fade to light, then dark. Next, I'm going to pull in some more raw sienna, get this a little bit more brown, into this yellow brown. I'm going to wash off my brush because I don't want too much on there. I just want a small amount to get these little hairs just right. I'm going to pick some of that up and start very carefully adding these clusters of lines over top some of the blue and even slightly coming over some of the browns in the center. I'm going to do that on the other side too, but we're going to kind of just the smallest little hairs, okay? They're not long. Inch our way down to about halfway on the muzzle on the right side now. And I'm going to extend this out a little bit more just because I don't want this to be shorter than the right side, even though this part is kind of being covered up. I can still tell that it extends out a little further than I have it. I'm going to add just a little bit more raw sienna to that so that we can now work in this little area at the bottom. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to trail little dabs, little hairs, just not much, but something, just a little something in between that blue and that brown purple. And now what I'm going to do is take this up further. So I have just my white, yellow ochre, and raw sienna mixture right here, the lighter value. I'm going to start blending that up so it gets lighter now. So what I'm going to do before I work on this area, I'm actually just going to cut in slightly in some areas into the purple with this yellow brown. I'm gonna go crazy here, add some orange to this because the next step is gonna be getting a little bit darker in value. And I will need my palette knife to mix this up. So I added some orange. So I'm gonna pull aside some of this yellow brown, pick up some orange in there and some raw sienna. And I'm gonna add in more white into that and some more yellow ochre. Okay, so it was the yellow ochre, raw sienna white mixture. Pulled some of that, added some orange, added some raw sienna, yellow ochre, and white. Got it? I'm going to pick some of that up with my liner brush. And I'm going to add some in some places right above the mask, okay? Not all places, just in a few. Clustering lines before we add the lighter value around it. And I am cutting over top, cutting down and into, following the direction the fur is laying. So as it goes up, that's how I'm angling my lines around that mask. This is just going to pull out that mask even more, complementing those blues. I'll even pull some down along here and over top some of those grays and over top some of those blues. Size 1 round brush. It's just a little bit thicker and it'll be perfect for what we're doing. I'm gonna dampen that. And now we're gonna go in with our yellow brown, going in the correct direction, okay? On this left side, it's more vertical, but with a slight angle to the left. And every bit more that I move to the left, it's gonna turn in direction. And that's how I'm going to be placing it. Not paying too much attention to adding those perfect strands over top the purple yet. We'll get there. And I'm just cutting into some of these oranges so I don't cover up all of it. I leave some while still filling in more of that white and turning my brush as I do that. Now there's a gap. We're going to add in this little gap between the purple and the bark. I'm going to add that and work up. These are much shorter strands now. And I'm going to use this color to fill in most, not all, of this white. Because with a liner brush, I'm going to need to get into here, but I'll save that for when we have the liner brush. Same thing on the right side, doing the exact same thing. It really does make sense to have some kind of orange. Oh, I accidentally picked up some orange, but I like it. That is a really good accident. Not an accident though, as we know from Bob Ross. I'm going to keep painting, and I might even pull in some more orange along the way. Here I go. I picked up some more orange, adding a little bit there, going back to my yellow brown, blending that, but leaving some behind. That orange might be the perfect like medium value to join this gray with the yellow. I like it. See that? Let's see if I can blend some of that just to balance it out on the other side into some of those yellows. I like it so much that I'm going to continue on, but with a different brush now, with our liner brush. I'm washing that size 1 round brush and I'm setting it aside, going back to my 2\0 liner brush. I'm going to do in its own pile a bit of the orange that we mixed up and the yellow, just to get it a little bit lighter. And now what I'm going to do is line after line, cut over top the purples and cut back into the yellows, using that to connect this purple area with the lighter yellows. If you add too much orange, like I did just there, I think I don't want to pull too much orange down. I'm going back with my lighter yellow. Right here, pulling that back in. I'm gonna wash off my brush, make sure it's clean and damp. I even pulled some of that water off so it's not dripping on my canvas. And going back to cover up more of this white. And now what I'm going to do is go back to the yellow brown, pull it back up again. It's so close in value to the pink purple, the magenta, but we'll be fixing that up as we get this area darker. This will stand out more. So I'm going back with my yellow brown, and now look what I'm doing. I'm cutting down into the purple magenta part of the head and making sure there's not too much paint on my brush. I'm going to now cut up over top the back. And these lines are not going parallel. They're not perfectly vertical. They're actually going in different directions because they're a little bit longer and fluffy. So I'm going to extend up these hairs on the ear and cut down into some of these violets here on that left ear. Even having some stick out like that. See how I did that? Let's repeat that same thing, but now on the right side. So I'm going to go in with this mixture of our orange and yellow brown. I just had a little bit there that I need to get. Now for this side. I know it can kind of blend in with the purples and it can be a little hard to lay down, but just be patient with the process. As we get the area behind it darker and connect it with this dark area here, it'll make more sense. All right, now I'm going back with just the yellows, the yellow brown. And here, because we haven't done that on this side, we're both having this hair be kind of pushed up against this tree right here, this branch, and going out in that direction. So if you want to watch me first, just to get a better idea, that's fine. I brought some lines down that are going more vertical, and then some lines are going to be pushed up. And even going the other way, because hair never sits perfectly. And if you notice your line's getting a little too thick, like mine, you just wash it off, pull off some of that water, especially with your detail brushes. But I won't actually go all the way to the top because a shadow, this is not getting a whole lot of light. I'm going to pull some more raw sienna in to this with this. Why not? I have some orange in there. That's okay. I just need to get it a slightly darker value to get inside here. So I even went over some of the yellows that I just painted. But I still want to indicate that this is hair. So I don't want it darker in value than here, than the log. I want it just a little bit lighter. These are also a little on the short side. I want to make sure they're about the same length. It's almost like the width of my finger. I want to bring those up a little bit more down here then. And I also want to cut down. Didn't do that step. Forgot about that step. Now, if you notice, maybe you don't have it on yours, but you don't want to have a line from where we painted the log and then left the line for the traceable. So if you need to, with another layer of your yellow browns, or even some of your oranges, remember that? I would go over that line, paint over that line so you can't see it. I'm even going to pull in some orange just right here and blend it in. All right, so we're not done on this side because we have a little bit of our yellow brown to extend a little bit above the ear and in front of it. And this is being pushed up by that tree. My lines are going to get a little bit shorter up here, but they're much longer right in front of the ear. And we cut down into those purples on both sides. There's just a slight bit of lighter value right here in front of the ear. So that's why I'm going to pull that down on the right ear. But this side, it's just much lighter. But just as you're doing this, try and keep these ears symmetrical. I'm going to add violet again. The second time around, we're going to add a decent amount of violet to our paint palette. We're also going to use raw sienna and fluorescent pink. Gotta have that pink. I'm going to set this brush aside so I can mix up our next color. And this is a bit of a process. We're going to go with some darker violets, line after line, going in the proper direction and the right length and width, connecting it to this part here, and then another layer of slightly lighter lines, and then alternating back and forth until we build up fur strands right on the top of the head. But the key here is not make them as dark as the mask. You want it dark, but this is going to stay the darkest part. So first I'm going to mix up a mixture of our violet and fluorescent pink, but less violet than fluorescent pink, and some white. So again, that's violet, fluorescent pink, and white. And you want this darker in value than the first base layer we've applied. So if you need to add a little bit more paint or get it lighter or darker, and we're also going to test it out too. If you're not quite sure yet, that's okay. I'm going to pick up that and add some white to it. And I'm going to need to get some more white. And we will be going back to this yellow brown. Okay, so also while we're doing this, if you need to mix up more of that, we'll be going back to that later. So this has quite a bit of white. I want this a little bit more pink, so I'm going to pull in some more fluorescent pink. And let's start with that. I am going to add in some more colors, I think, but let's just begin with that. So with my liner brush, line after line, clean and damp, we will be adding this slightly darker magenta. It's actually a decent amount darker. And these lines aren't super long, they're not super thick, but on this side, they're more angled up and to the left. They get a bit more, they straighten out in the middle, and then up and to the right on the right side. And I'm leaving gaps in between so you can still see that base layer. Make sure you thin out your brush. Sometimes just twisting it and rolling off some of that paint can help you get those thin lines. I'm just washing off my brush. And here, because they're so similar in color, this is why we're reusing this similar color. I'm going to pull these lines into the center part here, but not filling it in or anything, just using lines to connect it. Now what I want to do, since I have this color, I'm going to just work right here along the top of the head, overlapping that back area where we have the yellows and the browns and some violets. Keeping a steady hand, I'm holding my arm up with my other hand. All the way to the other side. And guess what? I'm not going to stop there. I'm actually going to pull some lines at the very bottom of both ears. Not going over all that purple, that previous purple that we used to paint in this ear. All right, so now we can work down and inside this area, still leaving gaps. Getting rid of that line. See how we kind of created this invisible line underneath that row of lines? Well, I want to overlap them. So the tops of these lines are overlapping the bottoms of that row. That helps get rid of that invisible line that we don't want, while still leaving wide gaps in between each one as we move down. Pull some of these purples into this like little triangle on both sides of the face. I'm just going to get another layer just because it's not quite rich enough. I want to richen up this color with the same one that we've been working with at the base of this ear and the other one. I'm adding Phthalo Blue to my paint palette. And I'm going to let that dry for a second. Even though those lines are that's a thin amount of paint, I'm going to just let that rest for a second so I can do a few things. Like I said before, I wanted to pull that highlight up a little bit. So I'll remix a light, yeah, that's a light blue. So that's white and Phthalo Blue. And with my liner brush, just pop that back in. And the other area, which you might not need, is my phthalo cyan blue with black to touch up that nose that I cut into when I did that muzzle. I'm going to go to some of these grays here, connecting some of these grays up into this area. So I'm going to mix up some white with black to create a medium gray, so not super dark and not super light, right there in the middle. That might actually be too light, so I'm going to add more black to it. And carefully just pull in some of these. Oh, that's actually a little too light, but I like it. I just have 2 light ones down there, adding some more dark gray in there. And just wide gaps in between and pretty long strands. I'm going to do that there. And a little bit on the side here where it's brushing up against that tree. I'll also do some right on this side because of shadows being created right here. And I'm overlapping some of those yellow browns. In fact, I'll go back to some of those yellow browns just so that I don't lose all of them. I added a few too many bits of gray there, but I still do want some gray. All right, so what I'm going to do next is grab my palette knife, pick up some of this magenta, and pull in some phthalo cyan blue into that, and white. You don't need much here, and it needs to be a medium to light value. What a pretty color. And now with that, we're going to do the same thing we did here, and maybe not as many, but carefully weaving in between some of those magenta strands. Remember, you can like twist your brush to take off some paint if it's getting too thick. And just enjoy this process, line after line. There is no rush here. Just enjoy the repetition. I'm going to overlap some of these dark purples with these blues on that side and the other. What you don't really want is too many crisscrosses. Like, I don't really want to, it's okay if it happens, but too many that they create an X, it just kind of draws attention to like that. But that's okay, because we are going to be adding layer after layer over top that. Still working with my blue, and because I want to pull out those oranges that we layered here, I'm going to add some more blues right up against it, cutting down. All right, so next we're going to go in with our yellows now. We need far less yellows than we do any of the other colors that we've added. So keep these pretty thin and fine. But very carefully around and in between some of these blues and violets. It really is pretty consolidated with a lot more yellows on the ends here on both ends. So I'm going to use these yellows to connect this area. I'll do that on this side too. Just bringing in some more of those yellows and up. And then I'll work internally. Your best is good enough. It's all you can do. All right, so then I'm going to revisit my magentas again. I'm going to go back to there. And I'm going to add some more. But I'm going to kind of work from top down instead of scattering it like I've been doing. I want to get this area a little bit darker than here. And just be patient. This is a process. You don't need to rush, and just maybe this is another great time to do some deep breathing as we apply line after line. I'm just gonna, as I work the back area, I'm also gonna add a little bit more purple in this area to the ear, on that right ear, and also in this ear, on that left and right, that's what I meant to say. And I'm just joining it again at the middle with more lines. So very carefully, just go back over the back. You might want to add, if you need to, add more of your light yellows and your light blues. I'm still working with my dark magenta here, but soon I'll be doing that. Going back to my yellows and my blues, adding in a few more. And what you don't want is just patches of that base color. You want to cover that up with lines. So here I go back with my blue. And I'm especially condensing them up here, not so much, not as much down here. Even some on the ear, why not? Why not add like a little wisp or two on the ear? And then back with my yellow brown. Oh, that's a little thick. Just touching up once more the side and breaking up some of those thick lines. I did a thick brush stroke of blue. So with my lighter yellow, I just broke that up by cutting into it with more lines right next to it. I'm going to actually do something a little different, pulling in some brown in a corner of this magenta with a little bit of violet. Which one's violet? Gosh, that almost looks black. And what I'm going to do is use that now, get that a little bit darker, still on that ear and then the back here. All right, so I'll repeat that again in case you missed it. That was raw sienna with a little bit of violet and our magenta. And I'll also add that right here on this right ear at the bottom. So a bit more raw sienna with a bit of violet and this magenta. I'm going to twist off some of that paint, just a little too much paint on my brush. All right, I'm going back to my original magenta, bringing some a little bit more on the right side. And then even a little bit on the ear. So what I'm going to do is going to the original magenta, I'm going to add just a few on the back, just to join the fur on the back that's purples with the head. So we had a lot of purples up here and we brought some down. And this is that original magenta that we mixed up for the head, not the base, but the second layer. And I'm just going to go over some, but not all, of these top hairs and even pull some down. If it's too thick, you can wipe it off just to keep it a bit more subtle. I see a little bit of some lighter pinks that I could put over here. It's just a little nudge coming at me. And originally we mixed up this pink right here. It's more of like a pink purple. So I'm going to add some white and some fluorescent pink to that with that color we mixed up. And I'm going to spontaneously add that on the back here and there. Okay, so now it's over the lighter fur on the back. A little bit there. I'm going to add a little bit here, a little bit on the head. Bring some in on the face. I'm going to even add a little bit, just not too many, but a little bit on the grays right there. Just a hint, just a few lines will do it. Maybe a little bit more in the back there. It gets kind of short. The strands are really short up there, but I can add a few there too. All right, so let's go to move to a light gray. So I'm going to do black, the smallest little pinhead amount of black with lots of white. And this goes a long way, really. Black is just such a strong dominant color. So with a clean damp brush and light gray, now we're going to carefully go over a lot of our work, but not all of it, on the white fur, making sure that we followed the fur direction as best we can, line after line. And these are very long lines. This is like the full length of the hair, as opposed to doing small lines up here and up around here. We're doing the full length. Now I'm leaving some orange and purples behind. Maybe not right there. I didn't mean to add too much of a brown there. Because of this cute, it almost looks like a frown line, but it's not. Now I will actually also be adding this light gray right here. And these lines also get much longer, but not entirely covering up the whole base layer. But these lines are going this way. That's how I'm doing my brush strokes. And even pulling some more up over top some of these browns and oranges with this light gray. See how I did that? Just added a little bit of more texture along there. And I'll start working my way up here, but I'm going to need to add more white to that because it's almost white up here, getting exposed to a bit more light. And also on the, well, let me finish that left side first, because on this side it does get a little bit darker gray, but still very light. So that hair goes in front of the purple and a little bit above. I went back over those lines of light yellow that I added. So first I'm going to start with the lighter hair that's getting more light on this right ear. And then I'll tone down the value so it's a little bit darker. Like right here, it's getting a little bit more light. So that's where I'll work first with these lines. And then add tiny, tiny bit more gray in there, or black, to make a bit more gray color. And I'll paint that on this right side over top the light fur.
All right, so you remember when we mixed up that pink purple that's much lighter, right above where I have the magenta? To draw out those greens in the background even more and to lighten up the area right above the white fur on the front of the face, I'm going to mix up that pink purple, the light pink purple, with some magenta.
So that I can cut down and kind of clean up this area here. Just pulling down in between some of those yellows and even some of those blues with a slightly lighter magenta. Even cutting up here, now going up with the slightly lighter magenta into some of those grays and light yellows. I'm going to mix up that color again because I didn't quite mix up enough. And then wash off my brush so it's nice and clean. And repeat that. Now I'm going to test this out. I'm going to see how it looks. Just adding a few, this color that we just mixed up, the pink with the magenta. Just adding a few random strands that are really small, going up the center and down. So the hairs kind of go like this. This is kind of how they're going up the bridge of the nose. And even adding a few more obvious ones right on the bridge of the nose, on the bottom. I'm going to go in with some magenta, just a few more back here, carefully and sporadically, adding some to the back. Excellent. And so what I'm going to do is just add a little bit more black to this light gray that we had. And with my liner brush, we're going to create whiskers. We don't need to create too many. This is a little baby. But I'm going to go to this light to medium gray. And on the side here, and over top, some of the blues that we added for the mask. I'm going to start long and then get shorter. And we only see them on the right side because that left side is covered up. So now as I work down, they're going to get a little shorter and kind of curve under. Now we're going to move on to this very shortly, but before I do that, I'm seeing that we can touch up that mask that we just painted over here with a mix of, I know we don't need much, a little bit of violet and our Flay the Sun in blue and white. I'm going to wash off my brush so it's not super thick with the paint that I just mixed up. And make sure it's clean and damp without much water. And very carefully, we can refine this area, cutting around some of those oranges and those yellows. Oh, that might have been too high up. even bringing some out and over a little bit more. And I think I added a little too much there, which is why I'm going back to the yellow brown. There we go, and even here. Much better. Excellent. All right, so we are gonna need a size 8 cat's tongue brush. We're gonna add just another rich layer of our raw umber and raw sienna mixture, what we originally used to paint this. Even come up here if you need to. And careful does it around those whiskers. I'm even going to take it up where we have that little opening for the den. Yeah, even up a little bit more. I'm going to use the point of my brush to even bring it up here.
All right, so once again, I'm gonna refresh my water. I encourage you to do the same. We'll definitely need that for the next step.
So with my rigger brush, size 0 rigger brush, and just straight white, carefully cutting down and leaving some chunks and some single strands. This adds to that kind of scruffy look of a raccoon. The unique fur where it's dark on the end, it kind of helps draw attention to that. But a little bit goes a long way. Excellent. And while we're here, I'm going to use the very small tip of this brush with just white and go over those eyes right there. Bring them out even more.
All right, creatives, this is where we're going to add our fall treasures, unless you've already added them to the background. In this lower right corner, I'm going to add dead-looking grass like straw cushion for the den and a multicolored leaf.
But I'm going to, with my palette knife, mix up some yellow ochre. I'm going to make sure you can see this. I'm going to go up here. Yellow ochre, a little bit of raw sienna, and white. I'll add a bit more raw sienna to that. And just like little birds pick up little straw, little dead grass, and they use it to make their den, I'm going to add these random ones that almost look like straws, bendy straws, going in different directions. And overlapping this area too. We're kind of going to get rid of these lines down here with some of that. I'll even have some that's kind of looking like it's coming out of the den. And then I'll be doing a multicolored leaf. So to shape this leaf, if you're adding this, it's a unique technique. Unique technique. And what I'm going to do is almost create like a cross. I'm having it pointing towards this raccoon. And I'm going to start right here and just draw a line down and also curving up. This is the stem, the end of the leaf right here at the end.
Since we're painting over this is just the foundation, the structure of the leaf. You can add some white if it helps it stand out amongst the other straw.
Next, I'm going to have another line that cuts in the center and goes up like that. And then from there, down a little bit. One line down, kind of not going back up in that direction, but down a little. And these are shorter. There. And so this is going to help us shape our leaf. And it's laying over top this dead grass and straw. So here's how it goes. From the top here, here's where I'll start.
So on the top of that one point, I'm going to add a V, but that V is going to kind of curve out. Almost looks like a bird flying, but placed upside down.
And then a little bit larger gap on both sides.
This is a wide open C shape that we don't want to connect to the other point, but get close enough to it so we can create another upside down V on both sides. Sometimes you might actually have to extend out that line, that point, and then attach it to that upside down C. Now we're drawing here with the paintbrush, so it's not going to be perfect, and we can touch it up, and we will, with our raw umber and raw sienna mixture.
All right, and then I'm going to have it drop down much longer curve on the bottom here, connected to those points on the end. And this is actually going to wrap around like that, curving underneath this line, and then same here, curving underneath and around like that. I'm going to have this one going off the corner just slightly. Now, if one area looks a little too high up and you want to readjust it, guess what? I'll show you how easy it is to readjust it. So like here, if I want to bring that down, I just paint over it with this very dark brown that we use for the base. And then I just wash off my brush, go back to our yellow brown, our golden color, and bring it down a little lower. And if maybe it's too bumpy and you want to thin it out, so easy. It's just an easy fix with the brown. I'm going to set that aside, and I am going to pull in some red. I have my permanent red here, and I'm going to start blending a little bit into its own pile with this yellow. So I just need a little bit of that, and then I'm going to wash off my brush to mix up the green. So we're also going to need to grab some green again.
For this next step, I'm going to use my size 1 Arteza round brush.
And that's grass green into our yellow mixture. So you choose which side you want to start on, or which color and which side. I'm going to start on this side with the green, working over my drawing. But guess what? Not the whole leaf. I'm not going to paint the whole leaf with this green. And I'm not going to fill in all the way to the outside because I'm going to wash off my brush, and I have my size 1 round brush, by the way. Grabbing some of that yellow and blending that while also covering up some of the background brown. So that's where I'm going to pick up some of the red, do the same thing on that side, and then blend them together. I'm washing off my brush so I can fill in a bit more of that red. But not all of it, because that's again going to be where I pull in some of the yellow. So blending and covering with this yellow. I'm going to richen up that red, gonna get a little bit more red in there on that right side of the leaf. But then wipe it off, go back to the green, and richen up the green. So we have our multicolored leaf. I even got a little bit of red in there. I'm going to go back to some yellows, put some yellows back over there. Pulling in some more green and some more red so I can bring some of that over to the left just to blend it. There we go. And I'm going to fix up that leaf just a little bit more, reshape it. For example, I think I'm going to pull this down from the top and then kind of angle this so it's on its, looks like it's on its side more. Using the dark brown and raw sienna, the raw umber and raw sienna mixture. And of course, we don't want to forget about this stem. So I have my yellow on my brush. And I think I made this stem a little too long, so I'm going to have to cut that short with my brown. Erase just the end of it. And another round with my yellow. Making those nice and pointy. I'll even raise this top of the leaf up a little bit more. Now, no rush if you're still working and blending that leaf. Although we painted over these lines, I'm going to put them back in carefully with our yellow. This is where they intersect in the center, and they're kind of curving out, going off to those points. I'm even going to add just a few more lines in the center. Now I'm just skimming over my canvas because I don't want this to be super bright, very subtle little lines on the leaf. And they're optional. You don't even have to add them if you don't want to. Now, coming from behind that leaf and just a few more areas in this lower right corner, I'm going to go back to this yellow so that I can add a bit more of the straw. To create even more depth, I'm going to create a glaze right now with my raw umber and raw sienna mixture in a pile with added water from my cup of water. I'm just watering that color down where it fades into this brown background underneath our leaf, underneath the straw. And our last and final step, if you need it, is to go around and touch up any of the dark brown areas while we have this dark brown on our brush. Right, creative, so that wraps it up for this baby raccoon fall tutorial. I'd love to see your creations. If you're a Patreon, be sure to, if you feel comfortable, add it to the private group so we can inspire other artists there. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. And be sure to like and subscribe if you already haven't for more animal painting tutorials, lessons, and workshops. Thanks for watching. Bye.